world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
And we are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It is Thursday, April 30th, as I am recording this, and getting to it a lot later in the night than I anticipated. Getting to it after I recorded with the Rational Boomer, and I am going to be tomorrow, Friday's guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast. Now, I encourage you to check it out over on YouTube and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's a good show. We talk for about an hour and a half. We cover a lot of different topics, and some of them may be covered here yet again. I don't remember all of the conversation because we went a little bit of everywhere. So if I do recover things that we talked about over there, well, I hope you enjoy the analysis a second time. Been having some trouble with Zoom lately. I think you've noticed I've been having trouble keeping my podcasts up. They've been getting stuck processing. I have reached out to Zoom. They don't know what's going on. It's not an update problem. But the last couple have actually froze in the middle of recording. And they got stuck processing for over 24 hours. So that's kind of irritating. Now, we got a lot to talk about because there's always a lot to talk about as we deal with this administration. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is Louisiana. Governor Landry of Louisiana has suspended, as of right now, the May 16th House primary election for the state of Louisiana. Now, the rest of the primary is going to go on as scheduled. They are supposed to do, state house elections, and I'm not sure. I think they have governor election this year. All of those are going to happen. Only the U.S. House of Representatives for the state of Louisiana is affected. Why? Well, this is a direct result of the U.S. Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act. When they said, well, you can't use race to determine districts, Louisiana went, great, we don't have to have two majority minority districts. So we're going to gerrymander on party lines. Now, where this becomes a problem is because typically African American voters more likely than not vote Democrat. So by doing this, they are setting themselves up in a favorable situation, and they know it. So they are going to attempt to delay the May 16th primary to July 15th, I believe it is, to July 15th, possibly even later, to give their state legislature time to redraw the maps based on that Supreme Court decision. And I figured one of the states was going to be doing that. One of them would attempt it. So I'm not surprised that it happened. I'm not even surprised that it's Louisiana. As we've been talking about, though, I don't entirely know that it matters, okay? As we are dealing with the 2026 midterms, everything the Republican Party is doing is ridiculous. It's horrible. They are losing at every turn, okay? They ultimately do not have a plan, right? Like, they don't know how to get out of the war in Iran. They don't have a plan to make anything more affordable. Their only plans are agree with Donald Trump and do what he says. And we've talked about it before. I think one of the things that they are trying to avoid is um, having a situation where uh, Donald Trump comes out and says, well, this person sucks, so vote him out. And you may see some Republicans be more willing to end up turning on Donald Trump after the uh, primaries, after the midterm elections. But I think ultimately the U.S. House of Representatives flips to the Democrats by anywhere from 30 to 50 seats. Mike and I agree on that. We were talking about it. It's entirely possible, and that's before you take into the gerrymandering into account. Now, I don't remember which TikTok creator it was. I saw somebody who did the math, and if I think it's California, Colorado, Illinois, New York, and one or two more, I think that are Democrat led, if they were to re-gerrymander their entire state like they possibly could and eliminate all Republican controlled seats, uh, Democrats would have permanently 218 votes. They would always have control of the U.S. House of Representatives. See, Republicans are playing with fire right here. They don't see how bad it's going to get for them. They think they can just do this gerrymander bullshit and that they are going to be able to, oh, well, if we redraw the districts, we are going to just be, the winners all the time. And that's not how it's going to work. See, Republicans have bought into their own brand. I remember hearing all the way back in the late 90s when I was in high school, when specifically Republican voters, um, but I shouldn't say just Republican voters. I grew up in a very Catholic area, and uh, I grew up in a very Catholic family. And I remember hearing it said a lot that Christians, Catholics, etc., those people who are on the right conservatively, they like to say that they were the silent majority, that they were being controlled by the rest of the country. And that's just not true. The reality is, and what it took me years to realize, the truth of the matter is they're not a silent majority. They are a very, very vocal minority. There are more people who disagree with them than agree with them overall, especially the conservative, like the extremely crazy conservatives. And this goes on a lot of issues, including abortion rights, um, and prayer in school, and all those kind of things. And the reason that they think they are the silent majority is because in order to get rights that people in the on the right side of the political aisle, the conservatives already have, a lot of us on the left have to launch lawsuits. That's how you end up with cases like Obergefell, where the Supreme Court has to come in and rule that two people can get married in the United States. Because the law and the Constitution don't actually say it, and because the 14th Amendment says everybody under the law should be treated equally. Um, that anybody can marry any other legal adult that they wish, or if your state allows, they can marry any. Uh, you know, there's a certain range of minor that could be allowed to get married with parental consent, but that's a topic for another day. But there's a court case for that, right? Because we on the left, because somebody sued to earn that right for everybody else in their situation, the and a court case deciding precedent is based on this one person who sued. Um, they feel that they are the silent majority because, well, we didn't have to sue to get our way. We didn't have to, we're not the one making a fuss. They're making the fuss. They're the ones trying to change everything. The reality is, the people who are suing are just trying to make things equal, and that they are trying to say not everybody shares your particular views. Specifically, using the example I was talking about with Obergefell, um, that uh, they end up saying, hey, you know, not everybody shares the Christian belief that marriage should be between one man and one woman. And that's the problem here. Now, is Louisiana's redistricting effort going to be successful? I don't know. I fully expect court cases, and I expect this to end up probably back before the Supreme Court. And there is a good chance that this ends up getting tossed uh, down the road, where they say it's too late in the year, too close to the election. We're not going to allow you to redistrict, and that if you want to do it, you can do it going into 28. What I fully expect, one of the things I expect here, is Republicans are going to try to redistrict in 26. If they get their asses kicked in 26, like I think they will, 30 to 50 seats, I don't expect them to redistrict going into 28. If Donald Trump doesn't make it into 27 or into 28, I think when Donald Trump passes, when Donald Trump is gone, when the Big Mac gets him, when J.D. Vance invokes the 25th, or when the Republicans finally grow a goddamn spine and invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Donald Trump, that is going to be what ends up causing the Republicans to drop all of the redistricting efforts. Do I think it's possible that they do any one of those things could happen? Yes, we've talked about it before. I do think it is entirely possible that there comes a point when J.D. Vance has to become president. I think it is more likely than not that the next president of the United States will be J.D. Vance, but that he will become president ahead of the 2028 general election. Now, something Mike and I were talking about over on the Rational Boomer podcast, if you didn't get a chance to catch it, is this idea that what could they do with J.D. Vance as president? Well, first things first, I want to calm down some fears that I know people are going to have every time we discuss the idea of J.D. Vance being president. I see somebody in the comments saying, oh my God, JD's going to be president. He's going to be much worse. He's going to be awful. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. JD's not going to be worse. He doesn't have the backing of Congress the way Donald Trump does. He doesn't have the backing of the voting base the way Donald Trump does. He's not going to be able to use the bully pulpit the same way Donald Trump does. And one of the things JD is going to do, first and foremost, is it may not be immediate and it may not be public, but you're going to see a bunch of things go back to the way they were. I think you are going to see J.D. Vance going through and renaming these things that Donald Trump put his name on. They're going to quietly go back and quit calling them by the name that Donald Trump gave them. Like, I think you're going to see, J.D. Vance is probably going to let Pete Hegseth go and pick his own Secretary of Defense. And when he does, he is just going to nominate somebody. And because it was the first name I thought of when I was talking to Mike over there on the Rational Boomer podcast, I said Dan Kane, the current head of the current chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, you know what? If that's who he picks, that's who he picks. And that's what would happen then is what I think is that J.D. Vance would just say, my pick for Secretary of Defense will be Dan Kane, General Kane. Done. You're not going to have a bunch of discussion about it. You're not going to have him come out and say, I'm calling him the Secretary of War, and he's going to lead the War Department or any of that. None of that's going to happen. It's going to be all above ground. He's just going to call him the Secretary of Defense, and it's going to be done. Then he's going to flip a bunch of the names back, right? He's going to start calling it the Kennedy Center again. He's going to, I think a bunch of the gold tacky bullshit. It may not all happen at once, but the gold shit around the White House is going to go away. I think a couple of the reasons why Donald Trump has done a bunch of the things that he has done in the White House, like they have gold lettering all around the White House now. Labeling the rooms. They never needed labels before. So why do they have them now? Well, because Donald Trump is suffering from dementia. He is. He may not want to admit it, but I firmly believe that he is suffering from dementia. The fact that he has, on more than one occasion, talked about passing a cognitive test tells me that he is suffering from dementia. And when J.D. Vance takes over, I think some of that stuff goes away. I think some of the tacky gold um, decorations all throughout the White House go away. Again, I don't think it's going to be quick. I think it's going to be slow. It's going to be methodical. But J.D. Vance is going to be given marching orders by his party, and they are going to tell him to fix it, fix their reputation going into 28. And doing things like that are going to be some of the things he is going to do to fix their reputation. Okay. I think that then J.D. Vance is going to pick probably a reasonable VP. And just because, again, first Republican I could think of that he could name would be soon to be former governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. He's pretty much a never Trump guy. Um, he's got some sway, he's got some pull, he has got a little bit of bipartisan backing. And when that all happens, I think what you are going to see is he picks Brian Kemp. Now, one of two things could try to happen. Now, I don't think the Democrats are dumb enough to fall for this, but the Democrats would then let the Republicans try to remove J.D. Vance. It would have to be pretty egregious for them to remove J.D. Vance ahead of the 2028 general. But what could happen is J.D. could choose not to run. And then Brian Kemp would be the incumbent VP. There probably wouldn't be a primary, and that would maybe be the Republicans' best chance for winning. Now, I don't think it's going to matter. I really don't think it's going to matter. My biggest worry, though, when it comes to the 2028 general, is that people are going to be expecting miracles out of a democratically controlled House of Representatives and a democratically controlled Senate. Now, they're not going to be able to perform miracles. Okay. But what I think could happen, there could be several things that do happen under this administration, even with a democratically controlled Congress. One, there is a chance that because of Donald Trump's dementia, that he doesn't realize what he's doing and forgets to veto certain pieces of legislation. Now, that would probably mean that the people around him wouldn't be advising him correctly, that they wouldn't catch it. Now, I don't know if that's entirely possible. Two, the right person, maybe even a Democratic leader, could get to Donald Trump and start getting his ear. Because all I got to do is pat him on the ass and tell him he's a genius and tell him how he'd look like a winner if he does X, Y, and Z. And they could maybe get him to sign a few things, especially if they start throwing that word, your legacy, around, or that term rather. See, Donald Trump's starting to really worry about that legacy term. And that's because I think he knows his time is getting closer and closer, and that he's worried about how he's going to be remembered. So we've been talking about the midterm race and how it's heating up. um, and how I think the Democrats are going to get 40 to 50 seats in the House. Well, we've been talking about the possibilities of the Democrats taking the Senate, and I want to go over my plan, or what, not my plan necessarily, but my view as far as where could we pick up the seats necessary for the House of Rep or for the Senate. Now, one of the things we need to do is be realistic, right? Where can we realistically pick up seats? Now, we need to pick up 4 seats and hold everything we currently have in order for the Democrats to get control of the U.S. Senate. 4 is the magic number because of uh, the speaker, or not the Speaker of the House, because of the Vice President being the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So if they only get 3, that brings them to a 50-50 split, and J.D. Vance would break the tie. Republicans stay in charge. We need 4. But let's be realistic. We need 5 because you can't count on Fetterman. If we try to block anything Republicans want to do, we can't count on Fetterman to be a solid no vote. He has been voting with Republicans. He sounds like a Republican. He is effectively a dino, a Democrat in name only. So we have to be careful and cautious. Now, where can we pick up 5 seats? Well, start with my home state here in Iowa. I think Iowa has a chance to be in play. Both the candidates running are good options. Um, one is a para Olympian. They both have good track records when it comes to being in politics in Iowa, and I think either one would make a good candidate. I just can't think of their names right now off the top of my head. But Iowa could be in play. I think Representative, is it Ashley Hinton Hensley? You know what? Let me just go ahead. I wasn't going to look it up, but let me go ahead and look it up now. Uh, let's see. From Ballotpedia. So here, Hinson, that's it. It's Ashley Hinson. I think she is probably going to end up winning the Republican primary, but I think she's beatable. So you have Iowa, could be a Democratic pickup. I think Taurico has a good chance of beating either um, Ken Paxton or beating um, John Cornyn in Texas. Texas could be a pickup. Now, Texas is going to be a little bit more of a fight, but one of the reasons why I think that it is possible that Texas is a pickup. If you look at the primary vote, and I realize primary elections do not bring out the same number of voters as a regular election. However, in the primary, uh, the there were more votes cast for Democrats than there were cast for both Republicans combined. And if those numbers still hold, regardless of which one wins, then that means the Democrats have a chance of winning. Uh, so you could have Texas, that's 2. You have Mary Portola in Alaska, popular statewide Democrat. That's 3. We could flip Alaska. Now you think of Alaska and you think Alaska's, well, it's pretty blue or pretty red, I mean, and it's not going to flip. But Alaska also has ranked choice voting. We've talked about it before, but what is ranked choice voting? Well, if you have three candidates, candidate A, B, and C, and none of them get over 50%, no, none of them get a majority of the votes, they look at, okay, you write, when you go to vote, you write down who you want as number one, two, and three. So the first time they look through it, they look at everybody's first choice. And if nobody gets 50%, then they take everybody who, the person who came in third gets dropped, and they look at who did, everybody who voted for that person, who did they vote for that person as their number two pick? And those votes get tallied. Now, in a three-person race, that's as far as you would have to go. But you could have 12, you could have 20, and you just keep going down the line until you get to somebody who has over 50% once everybody's been dropped out. And you only count the vote for the person. You keep counting it at the highest point in which their ballot still has somebody in it. Okay, so if you have six people on the ballot, and by the time, if you have somebody who voted for the Republican and the Democrat, but also voted for, say, the Green Party, the Libertarian, the uh, Democratic Socialist Party, and maybe an independent candidate, but put those four parties ahead of the Democrat and the Republican, they would count their vote first for whatever one they picked. Say they picked Green Party number one. Okay, well, Green Party candidate's out. They would look at that vote and say, okay, well, second you picked Democratic Socialist. Well, their party's out. Okay, who did you pick third? And you would keep looking at their ballot until you get to a point where their vote counts towards somebody who either is, well, till their vote counts towards somebody, and in that round of looking at ballots, you have somebody crossing that line of 50%. So it is a very different thing, but I still think Alaska is a possible pickup. That's three. You have Ohio, Sherrod Brown running for uh, re-election. Now, Sherrod was a former elected Democrat, okay? Statewide elected Democrat. Lost a re-election bid in 2024. Is running to get re-elected to the other seat in Ohio. Could get re-elected. It's entirely possible. So, what happens? I think Sherrod Brown is a potential pickup. There could be a fourth. You have uh, Roy Cooper out in North Carolina. There's five. And then you have, is it Louisiana? I think it's Tommy Tuberville in Louisiana, I believe, is another one that could be uh, potentially up for grabs. Let's see here. There's three Democrats, and I think it's no, that is not the one I'm thinking of. Maybe it's Alabama. One of the two. Um, I can't think of his name right now. Let's see. Um, no, I don't remember. One of the southern states, anyway. There was a Democrat running who had one statewide before. I thought it was Louisiana or Alabama, but I could be wrong. I thought it was for Tuberville's seat. Um, I can't. Tommy Tuberville. This is from Wikipedia, which I know isn't the best source. Ah, from Alabama. Yeah, and I think it's Doug Jones. I thought he was still in the race. Um, for Alabama. I thought he had entered, but I'm not uh seeing it here. Um, let's see what this says. Um, it uh doesn't say here. So I don't know. I thought he was running, but if he is, that could be a potential pickup. You got Roy Cooper out in North Carolina, I mentioned a little bit ago. And then we had some breaking news about Maine. And this is bad news for Susan Collins. Great news for Graham Plattner. Janet Mills, the former or maybe even current governor of um, Maine, has dropped out. And that is a good thing for Graham Plattner. Now, she had trailed Plattner the entire way. She was never leading. And there was never a point in time at which she was winning any of the polls, right? She was only in because she was an establishment Democrat, and the Democrats were cautious when it came to Plattner. They didn't like him. Why didn't they like him? Well, it was in part because he was different. He was not the typical um, candidate that they would run. They didn't like some of the things he was talking about. Um, so now Graham Plattner is the de facto Democratic nominee. It's pretty much too late for anybody else to get on the primary ballot. There are going to be no other Democratic challengers. The best or the only thing they could hope for, if they didn't want Plattner, would be for there to be a major writing campaign. And I just don't see that happening. Now, the big thing is when it comes to Graham Plattner, he is leading nationwide, or he is leading in Maine against Susan Collins in almost all polls and has been. And those polls have been consistently outside the margin of error. So Graham Plattner is now sitting in a spot where he could potentially oust Susan Collins. Not counting the seat that I thought for Alabama, not counting that seat that I thought Doug Jones was running in. Even without that, if Graham Plattner wins, and it's entirely possible, then I think he will against Susan Collins, that could be number 53. Now, we only need to get to 51 to have control of the Senate, 52 to offset the Fetterman advantage. That way, if we lose Fetterman, we can still block anything the Republicans want to do. And if we get to 53, that's just an extra vote, and it makes it that much more convincing when we vote to show how much the people don't like Donald Trump. when it comes to shooting down a bunch of his policies. Now, Republicans would like to say, and I've seen comments and things like that in on social media, where they make it sound like, oh, it's only because we hate Donald Trump is why we're against it. We'd be in favor of their policies. No, we wouldn't. Their policies suck. Nothing they are doing is actually good for the most part for the American people. That's why we're against them. However, now I'm just reading this article here. Uh, a bipartisan um, amendment cleared the House of Representatives attached to the Farm Bill. This Farm Bill is part of, or one of the pieces that funds food stamps. And one of the things with food stamps or SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, a lot of younger people will only know it as SNAP. Those of us over a certain age will remember it being called food stamps. And if you're over a certain age, you may also remember them being actual paper uh, stamps. They were they weren't actually stamps in the typical regard. They were pieces of paper, and they had a denomination on them, and you could only spend certain denominations. Like you had to have the outer book if you were spending certain denominations, and then you would get change back in those paper uh, stamps to buy your food. And eventually, every state went to doing it electronically with cards. And that's one of the reasons why when people come out and say, well, I know the food stampers are out buying whatever, how do you know? If you're not paying attention, it looks like they're just running a debit card, unless you look very closely at the logo on the card and you catch it when they run it, or if unless they say specifically at the register that they are using food stamps, how do you know they're using food stamps? Well, there's a bipartisan bill, part of this broader farm bill to fund food stamps. Um, Now, this would modify the definition of food to also include hot rotisserie chickens. Now, it sounds like that is the only change. The Senate would have to pass this and Donald Trump would have to sign it. But with bipartisan support, there is a better chance that the Senate takes it up. Now, uh, it passed with a vote of 384 to 35. Massive bipartisan support. But what does it effectively do? It would allow uh, people to buy hot rotisserie chickens. But uh, it would stop them at this point from buying anything else that is considered hot food. What is unclear, at least in the article I am reading here, as to how that would affect places like Iowa, who have cut back and restricted what is allowed as food. It used to be here in Iowa, it was pretty straightforward. If you could eat it and it wasn't a hot item, it was covered by food stamps. But they have since reworked the food stamp law here in Iowa, got a waiver from the FDA, which administers the food stamp program, and they don't allow things like soda, tea, most juices. They have to be over a certain percentage of actual juice before they are allowed. Um, I believe it is sugar, flour, baking chips, certain spices, gravy mixes, um, certain processed cheeses, certain meats are not allowed. They have made it more of a hodgepodge. Not everything is allowable anymore, like it used to be. You can't buy any pre-made bakery items, so you can't go in and get a birthday cake. But they also made it so you can't buy the ingredients to make a birthday cake. Um, and you never could get hot food before. Now, if this passes, it sounds like they would be allowed, but I don't know what places like Iowa are going to do with that information. Are they going to end up doing any sort of uh, change there? Is Iowa going to allow it? I don't know. But allowing people to get hot food, at least one option of hot food, one of the things they are arguing with it, they said, well, it would allow people to at least get access to a hot meal. And that is uh, huge, right? That is a good thing that they are working at changing to allow people to get hot food. And even though it's just a rotisserie chicken, might be the beginnings of changing how the food stamp program works. Now, what they could do, and which representative was it here? Um, Representative Grace Meng of New York has urged lawmakers not to stop at rotisserie chicken and back her Hot Foods Act for SNAP, which will cover all hot food, saying everyone should be able to buy a hot meal with or without a Costco membership or even liking chicken. That's why my Hot Food Act lets SNAP cover all hot prepared food. Now, I don't know if that is going to pass. That has kind of always been the hard line when it came to the food stamp program, was whether or not to cover hot prepared foods. Now, there's also going to be a trade off when it comes to food stamps or the SNAP program. By allowing uh, the recipients to get uh, the rotisserie chicken and things like that, those are sometimes uh, not that much more than buying a regular chicken. But depending on what you get and what they do allow, they may have to end up um, changing how much benefit people get. Because by allowing hot food, people would have to make a choice. And they have to decide whether or not they have to, if they're going to go get a hot meal today that they don't have to cook, but how much of their food budget is it going to take out for the rest of the month? And that is a big problem for everybody. Now, I was looking for another article here. Um, well, while I'm looking for the other article I'm looking for, uh, the official White House uh, Twitter account posted a picture of King Charles and Donald Trump and captioned it two kings. And I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. We're already running No Kings protests. We are going ahead and we've been saying Donald Trump wants to be a king. They try to tell us that no, he doesn't. We're making it up. all of those kind of thing. And they went ahead and he says they put out on the official White House Twitter page that um, Donald Trump and King Charles next to each other saying two kings. Like tone deaf and completely lost. Now, okay, I found the article I wanted to talk about, the last thing. Uh, so, a while back, the Senate had passed a measure that would fund all of the Department of Homeland Security except for ICE and Border Patrol. And this would be at current levels. I don't think there's any additional spending there. Mike Johnson had said that was a non starter. They weren't going to take it up, they weren't going to deal with it, that it was a ridiculous bill, that they would never piecemeal it like that. They passed it by voice vote today. Why? Because funding deadlines are coming up. Tomorrow is the 1st of May. That means they're going to be another month into payroll. We are at 75 ish, 76 days, something like that, since DHS was funded. It is the longest government shutdown by far in US history for anything, partial, one department, or anything. Now, Democrats are holding out when it comes to ICE and Border Patrol because they want a lot of um, changes to ICE and Border Patrol. We've talked about what those changes are and what that looks like. And uh, what they're dealing with here is Republicans who didn't want to make those changes. Now they are going to try to figure out a way to do to fund DHS and ICE using the reconciliation process. I don't think they're going to be successful because typically reconciliation, yes, it must be budget related, but one of the things about reconciliation is there can't be any new spending. So they couldn't authorize any additional money, but they want to authorize additional money for Border Patrol and ICE in addition to the money that had already been allocated by the One Big Beautiful Bill. So the only way they could do that is by authorizing cuts into other departments. And I don't know if they're going to have the votes to do that. So this now heads to Donald Trump's desk. He is going to end up probably signing it to end this. Of course, they're going to try to find a way to blame the Democrats. All the Democrats wanted was to stop the roving raids by ICE, force ICE to show their faces, where I have a visible badge with a name, get judicial warrants, and do targeted immigration enforcement where they know the person they are going after, not just detaining anybody and everybody, as well as wearing and using body cameras. None of that sounds outside of the line or outside of the realm of possibility. So DHS and almost all of DHS is now funded, except for Border Patrol and ICE. And we will see if they find a way to pass that around the Democrats, or if the Republicans are going to have to cave yet again and actually work with the Democrats to reform the U.S. Border Patrol and Immigration and Custom Enforcement. Now, last thing I want to talk about has nothing to do with news and politics, not really. I want to bitch for a minute, if you'll indulge me, about TikTok. And it sounds like TikTok is on their bullshit again. I know several large creators who talk news and politics like I do, who have now lost their another account. Um, for some, they are on there who knows how many account. Um, I think some of them are on like 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12. I don't know. One of them is on account number 3 and having to start back over. So far, I have been lucky. I have dodged all community guidelines violations. I'm not at risk of losing my account yet. But where I want to bitch and complain is it's obvious TikTok is doing some bullshit because my content is not getting out to hardly anybody. I can count on one hand the number of videos going back to November of last year that have crossed 1,000 views on TikTok. Now, and I have been in the creator fund making money on TikTok, supposed to be making money on TikTok for a year. Now, as much as I would love to make enough money on this to retire, and maybe that is a goal at some point, right now I'm not doing it for the money. I'm trying to get information out there, calm people down, and do all of that. But my issue here is I have been in the creator fund for a year. I've been doing TikTok videos now going on over 2 years. It's been over 2 years. In the last year since I hit monetization, I have only gained 1,000 followers. I'm not even keeping pace with my first year on TikTok. And when I first hit monetization, I was making a little bit of money. Not a lot, but I was making something. Great. And it was pretty consistent. In fact, it went up a little bit the first couple of months. And then around the time they started talking, really serious about it being bought by US owners that were tied to Donald Trump, everything went down. Since November, actually, probably even farther back, probably since October, my content just does not get views over on TikTok. Now I'm going to keep pushing stuff out there. I'm going to keep making content because I think it's important to get it out to as many people as possible, and that's one way to do that. However, it's just frustrating that we had a platform that was working, and because Donald Trump put his greedy little hands in it and was pissed off about it, that it got all fucked up. Hell, the only reason that there was even a TikTok ban in the first place was because people in Congress didn't understand how TikTok even worked, and they don't understand how programs work because we elect these old fossils. Um, they get asked where the data is being stored. Data was always being stored in the US. China didn't have access to it. And beyond that, they didn't understand. I mean, I remember one of the older members of Congress was asking a question of the TikTok CEO, whose name I can't think of at the time, during one of the hearings, was asking, so if I have TikTok on my phone and my phone is connected to the Wi-Fi at home, does TikTok have access to my home network, my Wi-Fi network? Like, Jesus Christ, yes, that's the goddamn point. Because that's how it connects to the internet. Now, I think what he actually maybe was trying to get out but didn't say it right was, could TikTok access other devices on the network? And no, that's not how that works. But these people don't know what the fuck they're doing. And then you have Republicans who squeeze the TikTok ban into a must pass foreign aid package that the Democrats wanted to pass as a poison pill. Thought, oh, well, we'll show the Democrats, we'll stick it in there, and they won't vote for it. Democrats said, ha ha ha, watch this. We'll vote for it because we're going to win in 24. We're going to win in November, and then we'll reverse it. I think that was their plan, was to reverse it after they won in the midterms. Now here we are. TikTok under American ownership, creators like myself not getting our content pushed out, other creators who've been doing this a long time not getting their content seen. It's frustrating, and eventually I think you're going to see TikTok going the way of the dodo, and there's going to be a new social media app, whether that becomes YouTube Shorts or wherever. I don't know. So keep looking for my content. I'm still going to keep putting out the short videos. They're going to be here on YouTube, the audio up on Spotify. But it's just frustrating, and I wanted to vent for a little bit. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. And I appreciate you allowing me to vent there at the end. I'll be back tomorrow with another podcast. Keep an eye out on Friday. Like I said, I had just got done before recording this, recording with the Rational Boomer. So keep an eye out for that podcast. It's going to be a good one. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will be back again tomorrow.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.